Torakichi said that as a child, he had traveled far beyond Edo into a hidden world in the mountains. In the first part of his story, he described something almost impossible to imagine. He said that an old man entered a small jar, that the jar rose into the sky, and that Torakichi himself later traveled in the same mysterious way. But Hirata Atsutane, the scholar who questioned him, did not stop with the spectacular parts of the story. He wanted details. If people really lived in those mountains, what was their ordinary life like? Did they sleep? Did they dream? Did they become sick? And if they became sick, how were they treated? These questions may sound surprisingly ordinary, but that is exactly what makes Atsutane's record so fascinating. He was not simply collecting a ghost story. He was trying to understand an entire world. Torakichi spoke about beings usually described as mountain people, ascetics or tengu. Today, the word tengu often brings to mind a strange supernatural creature with a red face and a long nose. But the world described in these old accounts is much less simple. The beings Torakichi spoke about were not merely monsters hiding in the forest. They had teachers and disciples. They moved from mountain to mountain. They followed rules. And according to Torakichi, they had something resembling a daily life. So Atsutane asked a basic question. Do the mountain people sleep? Torakichi answered questions about sleeping and about dreams. This may seem like a small detail, but think about what Atsutane was doing. A child had claimed that he had entered another world. Instead of immediately asking only about miracles, gods, or mysterious powers, Atsutane asked about night. What happens when everyone becomes tired? Where do they rest? Do they close their eyes? Do they dream as ordinary people do? It is almost as though Atsutane were testing the edges of Torakichi's world. A fantastic story can be easy to invent in broad strokes. A distant mountain, a mysterious master, a journey through the sky. But ordinary details are different. The more questions someone asks, the more difficult it becomes to keep an invented world consistent. Atsutane continued. Another question concerned illness. Could people in this mountain world become sick? The surviving record contains discussions of physical problems and treatments. There are references to ailments, including stomach trouble, and to remedies, prepared from various substances and plants. Torakichi did not describe a world where every inhabitant was magically protected from pain. Instead, his account contained something much more familiar. Bodies could suffer, people could need treatment, and knowledge of medicines mattered. Imagine the scene. A small boy from Edo sits before an adult scholar. The scholar asks him about beings who supposedly move through hidden mountains and travel in extraordinary ways. Then suddenly the conversation turns to stomach pain. What do you do when someone is ill? What medicine do you use? How is it prepared? For a modern reader, the contrast is extraordinary. One moment, the subject seems to belong to mythology. The next, it feels almost like an interview about everyday household medicine. The text includes descriptions involving herbs and medicinal preparations. Some passages are difficult to interpret precisely today, so it would be misleading to present them as a clear medical recipe. And they should certainly not be treated as modern medical advice. What matters here is something else. Torakichi's mountain world had practical knowledge. Illness was not simply cured by a flash of supernatural power. There were substances to gather, remedies to prepare, and methods that had supposedly been taught and remembered. This changes the atmosphere of the story. The hidden mountains were not described only as a place of wonders. They were also described as a place where people had routines. They rested. They learned. They suffered physical problems. They used remedies. And they passed knowledge from teacher to student. This may also help explain why Atsutane became so interested in Torakichi. Hirata Atsutane was one of the major intellectual figures of late Edo Japan. He was deeply interested in the invisible world. Spirits, gods, and what might exist beyond ordinary human experience. But in questioning Torakichi, he often behaved less like a storyteller and more like an investigator. He asked again and again. He wanted names, places, actions, objects, habits. He wanted to know not only what was extraordinary, but also what was ordinary. That is one of the reasons the record still feels unusual. Nearly 2 centuries later, Atsutane did not simply write, "A boy said he visited a supernatural world." He preserved question after question, and through those questions, the hidden world became increasingly detailed. So what should we make of Torakichi? There are several possibilities. Perhaps he truly believed that everything he described had happened. Perhaps memories, dreams, religious ideas, stories he had heard and childhood imagination became mixed together. Or perhaps his experience belonged to a category that is difficult for us to reconstruct. From the distance of 200 years, we do not have to decide. In fact, the uncertainty may be the most interesting part of the story, because whatever the explanation was, Torakichi's world had remarkable depth. It did not disappear when Atsutane asked about something mundane. Instead, more details appeared. Sleep, dreams, illness, medicine, the ordinary machinery of daily existence, continued even inside a supposedly extraordinary world. And Atsutane was not finished. His questions would move toward even stranger subjects. What kinds of objects did these mountain people use? What did Torakichi say about unusual tools? Mirrors and other mysterious devices? Some of those accounts are even stranger than the flying jar. That will be the next part of Torakichi's story. For now, perhaps the most surprising thing about his hidden world is not that people could fly through the sky. It is that once they arrived, life still had ordinary problems. Even in a world of Tengu and hidden mountains, someone could apparently get a stomachache. And Hirata Atsutane wanted to know exactly what happened next.